I pledge allegiance to Al Heyman for Premier Boxing Champions of America and to the network for which it stands every Tuesday on Fox Sports 1. What's up, guys? Happy Independence Day, America. I'm Michael Montero for Boxing Monthly. You're watching the Neutral Corner for the week of July 8th. New issue of Boxing Monthly is officially out in stores, at the app, of course, as well. You guys can get it online anytime. Interesting, Deontay Wilder, American heavyweight, Deontay Wilder is on the cover of Boxing Monthly this month. And British heavyweight, Anthony Joshua, seen here on my shirt, is on the front of Ring Magazine. So kind of a cross-continental thing happening this week with these two undefeated heavyweights. And, look, one day I'd love to see them fight. But at this point, that win for Anthony Joshua over this guy, Vladimir Klitschko, trumps everything this guy has ever done, amateur or pro. So this guy, Deontay's got a lot of catching up to do. But yeah, so releasing this on July 4th, which is Independence Day here in America. Wonderful, wonderful day where none of us have to go to work and we get to drink and blow shit up. We get to blow up fireworks. Myself, I'll be on the roof of my building watching all the fireworks go off. It's one of the coolest things about living where I live in the middle of such a huge, massive city like LA and being in a high rise is you could go up top. We have a helicopter pad on the roof of my building. You guys who follow me and see all my videos, you've seen me do rant videos up there. And in every direction, 360, there are literally, not figuratively, literally millions of people in every direction lighting off fireworks. And fireworks are illegal in this city. The stuff that goes up in the air and blows up, it's against the law. But millions of people do it. And I just sit up on the top of my building. Me and Tiff chill up there. We play some music, have a few drinks, and watch the fireworks show. It goes on for hours in all directions. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. And I get to do it every year on the 4th of July. Pretty damn cool. News and notes. Okay, obviously, slow week, right? Not a whole lot going on. It's a holiday week. But I want to talk a little bit about the Pacquiao-Horn ratings. And I'll be talking a lot about the fight in the review section. But we have ratings numbers. And guys, it was a blockbuster. And this was, again, the first ESPN with Top Rank, part of this whole new deal they have to kick that thing off. And it couldn't have gone any better in a lot of ways. And in a perverse way, even with the controversial decision, this worked out well for everybody. So ratings, 4.5 million at the peak. And the average was over 3 million. When you consider that this thing started, the undercard fight started at 9 p.m. on the East Coast, 6 p.m. out here, but there were several undercard fights. You had Michael Conlan, I think Shane Mosley Jr. fought, and then you had a great super flyweight fight. But those three fights took well over an hour, so the actual main event didn't happen until pretty late on the East Coast. All things considered, that's a pretty damn good rating. And considering, look, the Mayweather-Pacquiao effect and, the layover from that has hurt pay-per-view, but Pacquiao's still a draw. This was a very, very good rating. In fact, it was the most watched boxing event on cable since 2006, and that includes, that's network cable in America and premium cable. The most watched fight before that in 2006 was when Arturo Gatti fought Carlos Valdemir on regular HBO. So the Nielsen rating for this thing, most watched boxing event on cable in over a decade. That's a big deal. It was the highest rated ESPN fight since 1995. Yeah, you heard me right, 1995. I was in high school the last time an ESPN broadcast fight did better ratings than this one. So think about that. That's over 2 decades, okay? 51,052 fans. That was the announced crowd. So over 51,000 fans in the crowd in this big rugby stadium, which obviously the capacity there is bigger than that. So it didn't fill the place up to capacity, but they were never expecting that. They were projecting upwards of 55,000+. It didn't do quite that much, but it did over 50,000. It's a big deal. It was the most streamed boxing event on ESPN, any of its platforms, ESPN, ESPN Deportes, ESPN3, in ESPN's history of streaming. So all their streaming platforms, including ESPN Deportes, which for some of you out there who have suggested Mexican fight fans only watch Mexican fighters, well, here you go, idiots. Proof that that's not true. So all things considered, great ratings. And then you take into account that it was a much better than expected fight with high drama, a lot of blood. For the people who did watch the undercard, the first 2 fights weren't great. The first fight with Shane Mosley Jr. and David Toussaint wasn't very good. It was okay. Michael Conlan versus Jarrett Owen, not very good, but it was okay. But the Jerwin Ancajas, Teriu Konoshita fight, that was a good, it was one-sided, but that was bloody and that stoppage was brutal. So you had all the drama, all the trimmings, great ratings. Now, let's talk about Stephan A Smith. Stephan A Smith, in the lead up, I think it was the pre-fight hoopla when they were talking about the main event. He was in studio talking about this fight, talking about Jeff Horn being a quote-unquote nobody. And he brought up a list. He had a list printed out or something, I don't know, written down of his recent opponents. And he was going down the list and he said, this last guy I fought, Ali Funica, who the hell is this guy? And immediately I thought, how do you not, if you're a boxing analyst, you should know who Ali Funica is. And it was actually Doug Fisher of Ring Magazine, Ring TV, who tweeted it out, my exact thoughts. I mean, he just got to it before me. So instead of making my own tweet, I just retweeted him and quoted it. It was just like, yeah, this is exactly what I just thought. For those of you who don't know, and it's okay if you don't know. It's okay if you're a fan who just got into boxing and you're not really aware who Ali Funica or Randall Bailey is. That's another opponent Stephan A Smith brought up. That's okay. You're forgiven for that. There's casual fight fans who have no idea who those guys are. But Stephan A Smith, you're supposed to be a boxing analyst. You have the most viewed boxing event on ESPN in over 20 years. You should know who the opponents of both guys are going back 10 years. You should put in that research before the preparation and have notes before you do a production. I'm not saying Stephan A Smith, he should know who Ali Funica is, but even if he didn't, he should do a little research first, because if he did, he would find that Ali Funica, now he's kind of used for guys like Jeff Horn to build their resume up a little bit. He's a welterweight now. At his best, he was a really big lightweight out of South Africa, but he challenged for a couple lightweight titles, came up just short, but one of those fringe contender type guys who made for some tough fights, and a lot of prospects have built themselves up with him. He's fought several top quality opponents over the years. He's fought in America. He's fought in Canada. I think he's fought in America a few times. He's been on American television a few times. He may have even been on ESPN. Maybe it was Showbox or Showtime, maybe. But I know he's been on American television because I remember seeing him on TV here. So for Stephan A Smith not to know who he is and to say that with millions of people watching, not only does it do a disservice to Jeff Horn and to Ali Funica, but the diehard fans are going to know right away what you're saying is incorrect. They're going to call you out. And by the way, Al Bernstein of Showtime, who is one of the most reserved, objective guys. He plays everything moderate, never takes a side. He went off and had a huge, I think it was Facebook post going off on Stephan A Smith. And Al never does that. If you ever talk to Al, just one-on-one, he's so mild-mannered and calm. For him to go off on Stephan A Smith, and I know that politically that had to maybe bother Al, because there's a lot of reasons why Al would never really want to talk trash about someone like Stephan A Smith. But for him to do that said a lot. Even Sports Illustrated put out an article today. It was, you know, an online article, but talking about the poor ESPN commentary. And they were pointed at Stephan A Smith. A lot of you guys have asked me, why is Stephan A Smith part of that team? Well, he has 3.48 million Twitter followers. And that's just as of like just 5 minutes ago. I just looked on my phone. So he has almost 3.5 million Twitter followers. He also brings in some demographics. He brings in casuals and mainstream sports fans who listen to his show, listen to him blab on and on about basketball, football, whatever it is, that would never normally watch boxing. So it's a demographics thing, you know, in several different ways. It's a demographics thing with him. And he has 3.5 million Twitter followers. That's pretty much the only reason why he was doing that broadcast, because ESPN has dedicated boxing writers and people that they could bring on, people that they've used before to do that job. They brought in Stephan A Smith. And look, don't think for a second that Top Rank didn't want Stephan A Smith there. Bob Arum and the people at Top Rank, of course they wanted Stephan A. 3.5 million Twitter followers. So, look, horrible job by Stephan A Smith. And I think that he after the fight and after this decision, I like that he talked to Timothy Bradley and had some back and forth with him. And there was some good dialogue there. And he made Tim kind of be accountable for some things. I appreciate all that. But, dude, you got to do your research. If you're gonna broadcast in front of millions of people and millions of diehards are watching, not just casuals, you're gonna be called out on stuff like that when you screw it up. You got to do the research, and it wouldn't take a rocket scientist, a brain surgeon, to know that you should just pull up Jeff Horn's record at BoxRec, look at his last 5 opponents, realize that the last one was basically a title eliminator. That's what earned him this shot. Look at Ali Funika's resume, find out who he is, where he comes from, how experienced he is, and all the guys he's fought, and why that was a good, credible win for Jeff Horn. You got to do that research before you're going to do a broadcast like this. So that's it, guys, with the news and notes. Not a whole lot else going on. Like I said, holiday weekend. Let's get into the review. There was a lot of stuff going on last week all over the world, so let's do that. Friday night here in the USA, we had a couple of cards going on. Let's start in California at Fantasy Springs Casino in Indio, California. This was on ESPN2, another Golden Boy Promotions card. Oscar Negrete improves to 17-0, scores an 8th round retirement win over Sergio Frias, who he knocked down in the 3rd round. Negrete looked great in this fight. It's the best performance of his career so far. I know the guy that's managing Oscar, Charles Hill, is really, really cool, smart guy who loves boxing. And he talked with me about it this weekend, saying that he felt, and he's seen all of Oscar's fights, that this was by far his best performance. So Oscar's starting to get better, and he's getting ready to challenge for a title. He was supposed to challenge for a title in this fight. He was supposed to fight Randy Caballero, who pulled out with just a couple weeks' notice with an injury. Randy Caballero won the IBF Bantamweight title back in October 2014. Has fought only twice since then. And he's weighed 124 pounds, 122 pounds. So he was bloated. And actually, I need to correct what I just said a second ago. Randy was stripped of his title for missing weight and being out of the ring so much, and he's had all kinds of issues. So he was stripped of that IBF title. But Oscar was supposed to fight a guy in Caballero who held a title before. And that's where I was trying to go with all this. Oscar's pretty much at that stage where he's ready now, I feel, to challenge for a title. And with Randy Caballero, what a shame with him. He's had injuries and weight issues, and he's just kind of fallen off the face of the earth. Back in October 2014, when he won that bantamweight title, a lot of people were really high on him. But what a difference a couple of years makes. Also on that card, Ryan Martin, undefeated 140-pound prospect, improves to 19-0 with a unanimous decision over Marcos Jimenez. And Lamont Roach, a 130-pound prospect, improves to 14-0 with a unanimous decision over Jesus Valdez. Both of those were 10-rounders. So good fight, or a good card for Golden Boy Promotions on ESPN. All 3 of their guys stay undefeated in March forward. I think of the three of these prospects, though, for my money, Oscar Negrete is the most ready for a title right now. Now, in Toledo, Ohio, you had a PBC on Bounce TV card. Julian J-Rock Williams got back in the win column with a 7th round TKO. His opponent had no interest in being in there and was just all defensive. Put him down once and got him out of there with the referee came in and just stopped the fight. Completely one-sided. Julian looked pretty good, not great, but, you know, got rid of some ring rust. I just don't know. I don't know if the guy has all the tools necessary. That's such a tough division, junior middleweight. Maybe as more of those guys who are holding titles right now move up, you think at some point, you know, Andre's going to move up, the other Charlo brother. Lara's getting older, so maybe at some point he'll be in line for another title shot and he might really have a chance. Maybe he can learn something from that loss to Charlo last, I think it was November or December. But looked a little, I guess, flat and uninspired at times. But all in all, good performance by him, gets back in the win column. Now, we had a couple of shitty scorecards on this fight card. On the undercard, a local Cincinnati fighter from Cincinnati, Ohio. Remember, this was in Toledo, Ohio. 3 Ohio-based judges scored a fight for Jamonte Clark over Ivan Golub, who's a Ukrainian-born, Brooklyn-based fighter now, and just about everybody feels that the Ukrainian kid won this fight. Horrible scorecards, and horrible that all 3 judges were not just American, not just American, but from Ohio, and you had a fighter from Ohio. Just a bad look. But those weren't even the worst cards of the night. In the main event, Robert Easter improves to 19-0, defends his IBF lightweight title with a unanimous decision over Denis Shafikov. And for the record, I feel Robert Easter won the fight. I think it was close and competitive, but I think he edged it out. I think he just did the better work. I think Shafikov closed strong. I thought he looked better in the later rounds, which is surprising because for Robert Easter, a guy with not that many fights, a young prospect, he should look better and have a little more juice in the later rounds than a veteran like Shafikov, who's had some tough fights. But that wasn't the case. Shafikov closed the show strong, but I thought Easter built up too big of an early lead, and I thought he won the fight. But one judge had it 116-112 for Easter, which I can live with. Having seen the entire fight, I think it was more of a 115, 113, maybe 116-112 for Easter, if you're giving him the benefit of the doubt in all the close rounds. But judges Eugene Grant and Jaime Garayuya scored it 120-108, a complete shutout for Robert Easter. And for Jaime Garayuya, Ohio-based judge, he also scored that Jamonte Clark-Ivan Golub fight. So he was involved in 2 different fights that night, 2 different horrible scorecards, both of them benefiting either the local fighter, A-side fighter, however you want to put it. So, can't really say anything about the undercard fight because that's 2 prospects. It's kind of fallen under the radar of everybody. But that main event fight, that was for an IBF title. And those of you who follow me on Twitter, you saw today that I tweeted out both judges' names and just their BoxRec profiles. I blasted it out there. I said both of these judges should be investigated, and I copied the IBF on it. And I said, guys, is there going to be a suspension? No word from the IBF. I've messaged them, haven't heard a damn thing. So, and I copied PBC, by the way, in that tweet as well. I copied Premier Boxing Champions. And I'll say this. I pinned that tweet on my Twitter profile. It has maybe 10 retweets. Maybe. Guys, I could tweet a fucking fart joke and it'll get 30, 40, 50 retweets. Just some stupid throwaway line. But I tweet about 2 judges turning in 2 of the worst scorecards of the year so far. The worst scorecards of this weekend. And a handful of you retweeted it. So, guys, you got to be consistent here. You can't complain about judging when it's a fight that features one of your favorite fighters that goes against you, and then not complain about it when it doesn't affect a fighter you care about. This was a horrible, horrible score from these two judges. And this one Ohio judge had two horrible scores on the same night. So you need to get talking. You need to get on Twitter. You need to email people. Email the IBF. If you guys want to know the IBF's contact information, leave a comment below, and I'll post it. But they have a Twitter profile. Premier Boxing Champions has a Twitter profile. They have a Facebook page. They have all of it. You can find these people, and you can leave messages. Let your feelings be known. Because in the end, the IBF approved the judges because this was an IBF title fight, and Premier Boxing Champions approved the judges because obviously they promote Robert Easter. So those are the parties responsible. Call them out. That was it for Friday. On Saturday, Diego De La Hoya improves to 19-0 with a unanimous decision over an Argentinian fighter in Argentina. Diego De La Hoya, prospect, Golden Boy prospect, travels to San Luis, Argentina, and wins a unanimous decision down there. That's how you build a prospect. Send him into the lion's den in a situation where, yeah, maybe it's an overmatched fighter, but get him used to those sorts of scenarios. That's how you build this prospect up. And obviously, Diego is Oscar De La Hoya's cousin. Oscar went down to Argentina with him to make sure everything was on the up and up. There was no fuckery down there. Big win for Diego De La Hoya for a kid with only 19 pro fights. Good-looking super bantamweight prospect. I think he's on the cusp of challenging for a title himself now. In Moscow, Saturday, Alexander Povetkin improves to 32-1. He's got 23 knockouts. Didn't get a knockout in this fight, though. Unanimous decision over Andrei Rudenko. The scores were 120-109 and 120-108 twice. He won minor, vacant versions of minor WBO and WBA titles. The WBO and WBA recently reinstated Povetkin. He was tested twice in May, I believe it was, by VADA, passed the tests. So he's part of their clean boxing program, or he's using VADA testing, I should say. And he passed 2 tests, and that was enough for these 2 sanctioning organizations not only to reinstate him, but to sanction him for 2 vacant minor titles. So basically that means he's in the hunt now for a version of the WBO title, WBA title. So Povetkin should be in line for a title shot very soon if he can keep it clean, keep passing drug tests, and keep winning. Interesting that this ends a 5-fight KO streak for Povetkin. He hasn't gone the distance since losing to Vladimir Klitschko in 2013. So for 4 straight years, he's been knocking guys out. And here all of a sudden, he went all 12 with Rudenko. But I should also mention that Rudenko did take Hughie Fury and Lewis Brown the distance in 2014 and 2015. Now, I wouldn't rate Hughie Fury or Lucas Brown at the same level as Povetkin. But I don't know, man. Some people are going to look at this and say, well, geez, the guy tests positive and now he's not knocking a journeyman out. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying some people might draw that conclusion. And until Povetkin can consistently test negative and get himself back in title contention, get himself back in good graces with all the sanctioning organizations, and I do think the WBC and IBF will follow suit by the end of this year. Until he can do that and do it consistently, and I think at some point he's going to have to leave Russia. If they want the big boys now, look, this guy ain't going to Russia to fight. This guy signed on to do it before and got butt fucked. I don't think he's going to do it again unless there's big dollars involved. But this guy, dollars ain't going to take him to Moscow, you know. So Povetkin's going to have to do a lot of proving himself to get back in good graces. And until then, people are going to be suspicious, guys. And that's just the way it is. And by the way, you know, I'm fair about this across the board. It's the same thing with Orlando Salido, who's tested positive, right? Ray Beltran, who's tested positive. And all of a sudden, you know, he's been knocking people out late in his career. People are going to be suspicious. And again, for Povetkin, he's a 2-timer. And I know it was just trace elements, but those of you who are complaining about that, you don't know anything about microdosing and how that works. So anyway, also on that card, Edward Troyanovsky gets a 4th-round KO. He gets back in the win column. Now, Sunday, which was Saturday here in America, but Sunday over at Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane, Australia. Michael Conlan improves to 3-0 with a TKO over Jarrett Owen, who had no business being in the ring with him. It was kind of hilarious watching that fight. David Toussaint improves to 11-0, Australian-based prospect with a split decision in 8 rounds over Shane Mosley, who now has his second loss as a pro. These were middleweights. Look, Shane Mosley, he can catch, he can take a good shot, but he was being outboxed by Toussaint, just outboxed. Toussaint had a somewhat of a pretty good amateur career there in Australia, but look, for Shane Mosley Jr., if you're being outboxed by David Toussaint, who I wouldn't rate at the world level, there's not much of a future in there for you, kid. Now, co-feature, Juran Ancajas defends his IBF 115-pound title. He's now 27-1-1 with 18 KOs, scores a TKO 7 over a Korean-born, Japanese-based fighter. And I'm probably butchering this name, but Tiru Kinoshita. And all 3 judges had this thing 60-54 after 6 rounds. The stoppage came obviously in the 7th. So one-sided fight for the Filipino fighter, Ancajas. But he busted up Kinoshita's eye and set up a brutal stoppage. I tweeted a video of it. It was beautiful, but it was brutal. And in the 7th round, he landed a couple of good headshots that busted the eye open for good. And then went downstairs with a beautiful, beautiful body shot. Kinoshita went to his knees, and he was kind of over this part of the ring canvas where there was white trim for whatever letters, I can't remember what it said, but you just saw blood dribbling on the white canvas. It was epic, and there was the cameraman was right there to catch it, and you just saw the shadow of blood just soaking down, right? And then when he got up, the cameraman pushed in, and you just saw the eye was grotesque, blood streaming down his face. Truly, truly brutal stuff. And a lot of people that were tuning in only to see the Pacquiao fight, they caught the tail end of that. A lot of people, and Filipino fans that were tuning in for Pacquiao, tuned in for that one as well, because Ancajas is from the Philippines. So a lot of people saw that. Great performance. He is a player in that loaded super flyweight division. And I'd love to see him up against any of the top fighters in that division. Of course, September 9th, we have that big super fly card here. Maybe in Los Angeles, maybe in San Diego, but somewhere here in California. And I put this guy up against any of them. I want to see it. He hits hard, great angles, nice, sharp, straight punches, a lot of precision, a lot to like there. Last but not least, the main event. Jeff Horn, the Hornet, improves to 17-0-1 with 11 knockouts, wins a unanimous decision over Manny Pacquiao, takes his WBO welterweight title. And a lot was said about this decision. So, 2 judges had it 115-113 for Horn, and 1 judge had it 117-111, which was a terrible, terrible score. For that 1 judge, and I tweeted out the judges' names. I did a whole rant video on this fight that was like 30 minutes long right after the fight happened. In fact, the immediate replay is playing in the background on my TV as I'm sitting in my living room doing that rant video. So most of you guys probably already seen that. Not too much to repeat there. The decision was just bad. Look, there are some of you out there whose opinions I really respect who thought Horn won. I would ask you to go back and watch the fight. Turn off the commentary, whether it was the British commentary over in the UK or the ESPN commentary here. Because I do think that Teddy Atlas was being a little too biased for Manny Pacquiao, in my opinion. I thought that Tim Bradley was bringing up some interesting points that kind of Teddy wasn't hearing, and Stephan A Smith as well. So, yeah, just watch it without commentary and really, really pay attention to who's landing their punches. Not clubbing, glancing blows, or not who's mauling somebody and pushing them back with their forearms or anything like that with their shoulder, but actually landing punches. And guys, I'm sorry. The person who was landing the punches was Pacquiao. You know, I was watching this fight with a few people, and I saw a few people that had this round or this fight like even halfway through. And I had it, I think, 4 rounds to 2, but I could even see 5 rounds to 1. But to have it even halfway through, I think a lot of people were just seeing a fighter in Jeff Horn who they weren't expecting to do much, do better than they thought, and be kind of competitive. And they were curving the grading scale based on that. They didn't come in looking at the fighters on even terms and judging them evenly. They came in expecting to see this. And when they saw this, it made them score like that. You know what I'm saying? It was just a little bit bended, the grading curve. I was surprised that Horn was so much physically stronger than Pacquiao. Now, Horn is the naturally bigger guy, and Pacquiao has to load up on carbs and everything to come in above 140 pounds. If the guy stopped eating and stopped working out so much, he would shrivel down to 135 instantly. He's not a big person. He's small. Even at this stage of his career as a grown-ass man, he's a blown-up lightweight. And his best work was at featherweight, okay? So, yeah, Pacquiao started basically as a flyweight, but he was a teenager. So that wasn't him as a grown man. As a grown man in his 20s, he was a featherweight. And at his absolute best, if you're rating Pacquiao on an all-time great status against other fighters back in the day when there was 15-round fights, same-day weigh-ins, and not the same nutrition and supplementation people have today, Pacquiao's a lightweight, okay? So all that being said, I've never seen somebody mug him and maul him and push him around in the ring as much as Horn did. Antonio Margarito couldn't do that to Pacquiao. And they came into that fight, I think, weighing 151 pounds. I think that was the catch weight for that fight. So Margarito is a bigger guy than Horn. And I've thought about this. Horn was able to have that success because he came into the fight with a mindset of, I'm not going to give this guy any fucking respect. And that's actually a point Timothy Bradley, who was doing the broadcast on ESPN, that he made. Horn was determined to do whatever the fuck it took to win the fight. He didn't lay down. And for me, that's what surprised me. And as I was watching it with friends and stuff, friends and family, some of them were going, oh my God, this guy, it's only a matter of time before he gets caught. And I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, man, he's just putting his head down and bowling in there with absolutely no angle. His form's horrible. He's wide open for an uppercut. If Pacquiao would have just shot an uppercut, he could have knocked this guy out in a few rounds. But Pacquiao did start to land punches. And Horn took them and showed a lot of resiliency. And this goes back to the fight with Sergey Kovalev and Andre Ward, that rematch that happened a few weeks ago. That's going to be debated for months and months with boxing fans. The bottom line is Sergey Kovalev did not come in that fight ready to walk through hell. Jeff Horn came into this fight with Manny Pacquiao ready to walk through hell if necessary. And if you need any proof of that, watch the 9th round. Manny Pacquiao handed Jeff Horn's ass to him. He beat the shit out of Jeff Horn in that round. Old Pacquiao would have knocked him out well before that round, but even Pacquiao of 2 years ago, if he had a fighter that hurt, he would have finished him right there. This version of Pacquiao just didn't have it. It almost kind of looked like Vladimir Klitschko against Anthony Joshua. And maybe subliminally, that's why I'm wearing this damn shirt. Because Vladimir Klitschko had Joshua so badly hurt, and he tried to follow up. Klitschko was throwing uppercuts and hooks, punches he doesn't throw very much, and he was trying, but his mouth was open. He just couldn't do it. The difference maybe between Klitschko and Pacquiao here is Pacquiao just fought last November. Klitschko hadn't fought in like 2 years or whatever it was, right? So Klitschko was coming off a long layoff, and he's in his 40s. It was fighting a killer. Manny Pacquiao had just fought in November. He's in his late 30s still. Much closer to his physical prime than Klitschko. Now, he's taken more wear and tear than Klitschko, sure. But I'm just talking physical man strength prime, right? And but yeah, there were some similarities there. The younger, stronger, more physically prime athlete, in this case, Jeff Horn, was able to absorb that attack and continue fighting. And I thought he went out and won that 10th round. Now, I thought Pacquiao won the 11th. The 12th round, Horn probably took it. But I just thought that throughout the fight, Pacquiao did the better, more consistent work. And I thought Pacquiao won the first half of the fight. I thought the second half of the fight with that big 9th round. Now, here's the thing. If you score that 9th round 10-9, which I do, because I don't believe in scoring a 10-8 round unless there's an absolute beatdown. This was as close to a 10-8 round as you could give, though, guys. If you scored at 10-9, then perhaps you had Jeff Horn winning the second half of this fight. But if you scored that round 10-8, then the second half of the fight was even. And Pacquiao won the first half of the fight easy on my card. All the blood and everything on Pacquiao's face was from headbutts. All the blood and stuff on Horn's face was from punches. And it wasn't just blood. His nose was broken. It looks like his cheekbone might be broken. You guys have seen the picture of him in the hospital after the fight, nursing himself, all wrapped up, and he had ice on his head. He took a ass whooping, and Pacquiao looked fine. Pacquiao has gashes on the top of his head from Jeff Horn headbutting him, but his face looked fine. It had a little bit of wear and tear, but not much. And I get it. That's not how you always judge a fight. But when the smaller, older guy is beating up the face of the much younger, much stronger, much taller, much more energetic guy, and he's landing twice the amount of punches than the other guy and landing 3 times the amount of jabs as the other guy, I'm sorry, guys. Manny Pacquiao won this fight. And we respectfully disagree if you thought Horn won. No way in hell Jeff Horn won this fight. Go back and watch again. And I'm not talking about all this slow motion crap and these videos that are out there that show punches landed that are very selectively edited. Some of them are done well, but most of them they're selectively edited. Watch the whole damn fight. No sound. No crowd noise, no commentary. Just watch it again and really, really ask yourself, did Jeff Horn win that fight? Now, was it a robbery? In my opinion, yes. When one guy clearly wins and doesn't get the decision, that's a robbery. Are all robberies created equal? No. But this was a case where a guy was fighting better than people expected, and he was getting credit for landing punches, I think, in some people's mind, that he wasn't landing. He just wasn't. And it takes me back to this fight again, because Anthony Joshua got credit from 2 of the judges for landing a lot of punches that simply did not land. Klitschko is backing up and sliding and slipping with a lot of the shots and kind of rolling with them, and that's what Pacquiao was doing a lot with Horn. But look, what's next for these two? I've thought about this. In the rant video I did, part of me thought that Pacquiao should just move on. But the more I've thought about this, guys, if he fights Terrence Crawford, Keith Thurman, Errol Spence, Kell Brook, he's going to get hurt. Pacquiao's going to get hurt. And he's already taken a lot of punishment. He's taken years off his life. He's going to get a heavy tongue later in his life. Okay? He needs to stay away from those guys. If he wants to rematch Jeff Horn in Australia later this year at another big event where now there was, 51,000 for this? It's going to do more than that the second time around. There's going to be even more money on the line. There's going to be even bigger viewership this time around. Why not? He got over $10 million for this fight. If he wants to continue fighting, why not? And for Jeff Horn, he has to heal. He's got a lot of injuries, a lot more than Pacquiao, that he's got to heal up. But if he wants to get right back in there with Pacquiao and do it again, it's the biggest money fight he can make. He'll get more money in Australia against Pacquiao than he would against any of the other fighters I just mentioned. He doesn't want any of that PBC stuff for $1 million against Keith Thurman in Vegas or something. You think he wants to walk into that? Hell no. There's a rematch clause anyway. So what we're probably going to get is later this year, as long as Jeff Horn is medically cleared to fight, a rematch between these two. And it's going to be interesting to see, will Pacquiao look any better? Is it possible he took Jeff Horn lightly? Because again, last November against Jesse Vargas, I thought he clearly beat Jesse Vargas. I thought he looked better against Vargas than he did in this fight. He even dropped Vargas once. He couldn't drop Horn though. And after having him almost out of there in the 9th round, he couldn't follow up in the 10th, 11th, 12th. He looked to me to be phoning it in, looked a little slower, looked kind of sloppy. So was that him taking Horn lightly? Was it him being sick as he said he was? Or was it him simply just getting old? He's been in a lot of fights against much bigger men. A lot of you guys that just started watching boxing, particularly Mayweather fans and stuff like that, you guys think Pacquiao has been at this weight forever. Anything above 135 pounds, Pacquiao is fighting a guy who is naturally much bigger than him. And Pac's been doing that now for basically a decade. He's been fighting much bigger men in a rough style that takes punishment for about a decade now. So it's starting to take its toll, man. So if he wants to continue fighting, yeah, rematch Horn later this year in Australia. Do one farewell fight in the Philippines next year and call it quits. That's the perfect sign-off for Manny Pacquiao. For the record, I think he beats Horn in the rematch, and they'll go up against the even lesser of a fighter in the Philippines next year, and he can walk into the sunset for once and for all. He'll be damn near 40 years old at that point. For Jeff Horn, this rematch is going to be extremely lucrative for him. He's going to get millions of dollars. He's a hero in Australia right now. He's the most popular fighter there. And you know what? He's earned it. He worked his ass off. He was ready to walk through hell. He literally did walk through hell. Look at his face. His life is literally altered, will likely be altered because of the punishment he took in that fight. But he was willing to do that to have a chance at greatness. And you know what? More power to him. So now he's going to get this rematch, and it's going to make him a ton of money, but he's not a top welterweight, guys. He has no business being in the ring. I think even somebody at Sean Porter level, Danny Garcia level, although it'd be entertaining and he'd have his moments, they'd eventually wear him down. They just would. That's what I see with Jeff Horn. But that's it with the review of last week. There's not much to preview this week, but we'll do one real quick. Not much happening at all this week, but over in the UK on Saturday, there's a couple of cards featuring UK-based prospects. So in London, super middleweight prospect Daryl Williams, he's undefeated. He's fighting, I think this is a Box Nation card. I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on that, but I know he's a Frank Warren guy, so I'm thinking Box Nation should be a stream of that out there. In Glasgow, 3 prospects. All these guys are undefeated as well. Both of these guys are super lightweights. Josh Taylor and Jason Easton fighting, and undefeated welterweight prospect Gary Murray fighting. So that's really it, guys. That's what's going on of note on July 8th. Next weekend, we got a bunch of action, or next weekend, I should say, July 15th, including that great card here in Los Angeles, that great triple header that's going to be on HBO. So I'll preview all of that stuff, and then I'm going on vacation for a week. We're going to do a 1-week hiatus. I'm going to my hometown of Detroit. So all my Detroit peoples, get ready. We'll do a meet and greet. I can't wait to have some Buddy's Pizza, the best pizza in America. So we'll talk more about that next week. But guys, have a happy, safe, fun 4th of July. Enjoy times with your family, with your loved ones. And thank you for all the support. I truly love you guys. Thank you so much. And I'll see you at the fights.